AI is already smarter than us. We're very used to being the king of the intelligence castle on Earth. That could be changing in our lifetimes. If you're observing Earth, this is when you're saying to everyone, hey, come here, it's getting really good.
Why aren't there tons of other intelligent species that we've encountered that we can see out there?
Either the origin of life is super rare, or maybe human level intelligence for some reason is just very, very uncommon. Or maybe there's a lot of people like us. The question is, what's scarier? What's the bigger risk? People focus on the dystopia, but like the utopia that we could have, I want to be there.
CEO and co-founder.
Elon Musk, the founding partner of
Now I'm here, co-founder.
My friend Tim is one of my favorite writers and thinkers. I've been reading his work for over 10 years, and he's followed by millions of people online. He's not a great artist, but he also does these amazing illustrations that teach us about these concepts, and he explains them and forms them in ways that really advance how all of us think about the world. He's someone who's followed closely by Elon Musk, by a lot of my smartest friends. Tim's written a lot about AI. He's written about the Fermi Paradox, about the great challenges humanity faces now and in the future and how we can think about them. Tim wrote an amazing book called What's Our Problem? Whether or not you're on the right or the left, I think it's inspiring for all of us to understand human nature and to try to inspire us to act out of the greater, higher parts of our mind. Tim's probably one of the most important public intellectuals on this topic, and it's always really fun to learn from him about it. I'm Joe Lonsdale. Welcome to American Optimist. We have my friend Tim Urban with us here today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to have you here. I think I must have read your work at least 10 years before I got to know you in person, so
yeah.
It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, and you kind of you're a major social hub of Austin, so it's been fun getting to know a bunch of your world here.
I'm sad because Elon's not here anymore as much as he's in the White House, although I'm not sad about that in particular, but there's a lot of good people here.
He'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. So you're a writer and illustrator of the popular Wait But Why blog. You're the author of What's Our Problem, which is this awesome book you've written about kind of what's going on in our society, and it's not really political, but it's sort of political, I guess you'd call it. I think one of the most important books I've read in the last few years. Let's just start off a little bit of the history and things you've talked about in the past. I think it's fair to say you're one of the most forward-thinking kind of bloggers and thinkers online today. You went to Harvard and you studied government. How did you get into blogging?
I was running a small business, like an ed tech company, with my friend Andrew Finn, and I was blogging on the side as kind of just a hobby, like 5 hours a week. But I had liked that more than I liked running the business. So at one point we just decided we don't need both of us here, and I'm going to go and see like what if I put 60 hours a week instead of 5 hours a week into blogging. So I started this new blog, Wait But Why.
What year was this?
This was 2013. I mean, I guess the thesis was. People said blogging's dead. That was like a common thing to say back then. And like the internet was just flooded with content. You had BuzzFeed now producing 1 trillion articles a week. But the thesis we had was kind of that there's actually not very much really high quality stuff. There's a lot of like B- content, C+ content out there. And if you can just work really hard and really put out, A-level content, that people will notice. That was the idea.
And I think a lot of us noticed. I think all my friends were reading your stuff. Like you had a few that went super viral. What was the first one or two that went super viral?
The first one that went really viral was actually basically it was an article about why millennials were so unhappy as people, and that they had some like awful perfect storm of they are super ambitious and told that they're going to change the world, but they're also told that they specifically are special. But every single one of them thinks that, and then they.
Fortunately, you and I are special.
We
so
actually
fine,
are.
Yeah.
And I actually call everyone on that. And in the post, I say, I bet the readers right now are thinking, oh, good point, but I actually am special, and this is the problem.
Yep.
But then they look on like Facebook, which was a new thing then, and they see all their friends kind of showing better versions of their life than they really have. So everyone thinks everyone's doing better than they are. And anyway, that blew up. Because it just it was the right thing at the right moment. I've learned with blogging, it's not the post itself as much. Like, if I had posted that a year later, it might not have done anything. It's just the right exact week to post it by luck.
There's some kind of like thing going on in media and culture where you have to catch the wave.
Exactly, and it's just the right thing. That's why the way to do blogging is, if you want to build an audience, is just like take a lot of swings at the bat.
One of my favorite early ones was the Fermi Paradox. That was relatively early then.
Yeah, that was early too. I was in the first year, and at the time, actually, I felt like I was venturing out into like what I really, really wanted to write about, and as opposed to kind of trying to go viral. I was like, I actually didn't even consider that post had a chance to go viral, because I felt like it was just kind of like for nerds like me.
Super interesting to think about it. I think about these things a lot, but I hadn't spelled it out as well as you have, which was really cool. You kind of like took a lot of our views and you pushed them further. Let's talk about this a bit. So Fermi Paradox is like, why aren't there like tons of other intelligent species that we've encountered that we can see out there. And I guess the idea is like how many stars are there in the galaxy?
Like between 1 and 400 billion.
And then there's like billions of galaxies.
Yeah, like more galaxies than there are stars in the galaxy, like almost 1 trillion galaxies we've found.
This is absolutely crazy. So it's like an insane number of chances.
Just a wild number.
This is really what's called a great filter Q. Like
Yeah.
why, like what's the hard thing for intelligent life? And I originally thought, oh, maybe there's just like not just like single cell life that develops, because that seems really, really weird for like things to turn into that. But then it turns out it's actually maybe not that hard for like self-replicating like RNA and single cells potentially to develop themselves, right?
We don't know. I mean, so there's two kind of camps, you know, because there's a million theories.
Yeah.
But you can group them into two camps. One camp kind of fundamentally believes, of course, there's lots of life out there. Like we're not special. That's like the most naive human thing to think, is that we're the only one. Totally. So they think that, and they come up with all these other reasons we might not have seen life.
We might be in a zoo where they're protecting us. Who knows?
Exactly. We're looking for the wrong signals. Like we're like in a building today with listening to a walkie-talkie. You know, no one's here, and there's no one coming through the walkie because no one's on walkie-talkies.
Or anyone who speaks up goes and gets destroyed by predator species,
exactly.
which is the terrifying.
All kinds of, or there's just, it would be very easy if they wanted to conceal themselves from us. It would be as easy as we would have to conceal ourselves from kind of birds in a zoo if we wanted to.
Yeah.
When they're smarter than us, like they can just fool us.
They're just living on a different plane potentially.
Yes. Now the other group says actually, you know, even if most of them tried to conceal themselves from us, a species of a certain level of advancement would, in a blink of a kind of an eye, universe-wise, would start to colonize many stars and wrap Dyson spheres around the stars and kind of it would be obvious. It would look different. Life makes things. Think about humans. When you look down at the planet, like the planet looks different than it did 50,000 years ago because
the electromagnetic radiation coming out, everything's different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we would notice something, and the fact that we see nothing, they say, is actually points to us being alone. So I don't know who's right, but the people who say we're alone, they say that there may be a great filter, something that either the origin of life is super rare, or maybe prokaryotes are everywhere, you know, little bacteria, but going to this eukaryote kind of like more complex cell is maybe the great filter. Maybe that's really rare, or maybe there's a lot of that, but actually it's very rare for something to get to specific human level intelligence. For some reason, is just very, very uncommon. It took 600 million years to happen here. Yep. Maybe it's very rare. So, or maybe there's a lot of people like us, and we're not doing that much yet, and then AI kills everyone.
That's the scary great filter.
It's ahead of us.
Yeah, that's the scariest answer, is that if the great filter's ahead of us, and this is, and of course this ties into AI and into SpaceX and all these things. They're all kind of related, right? Because you know, it's interesting to me. I agree. I'm so inspired by SpaceX. I think you're right. This is like an inspiring, positive thing for the world. So I'm a huge fan of what Elon's doing, just for that sake and what it does to us. And Elon talks a lot about being a multiplanetary species. I think what he's doing is really good. So I don't want to criticize, but to me, that being the great filter seems unlikely. Although I guess it is possible that you just like blow up all your planet or destroy a planet. There could be some technology that just makes the planet unlivable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're building such insane technology in the future that, you know, even just AI manufactures the worst pandemic that you can ever imagine, and just like we have no chance. But maybe if we're on two planets, maybe it's somehow harder. I mean, Elon calls it life insurance for the species. I mean, and I think Stephen Hawking said that the dinosaurs, you know, went extinct because they didn't have a good enough space program, you know, and that you know, if
there's definitely something there that's positive overall.
Think if there's a solar system far away we're observing, and you're rooting for them to go extinct. What you don't want is them to start spreading out. Oh no, now they're on 3 planets and 7 space habitats, and they're on moons, and now they're probably going to stick around for a long time. Yep. So we have all our eggs on one planet right now, basically.
That's fair. So it seems like a universally good thing. Although if the great filter is like AI or something, it probably could hunt us down on multiple planets. Right?
Yeah,
it's a scary thing to talk about, but you have to kind of.
It's true. No, if it's something like really bad AI, it doesn't seem like AI would have and they wanted to wipe us out. It doesn't seem like being on multiple planets in the solar system would really help. Maybe if you're in different solar systems and now there's a speed of light, you know, big speed of light difference between you, but
good overall though to go to multiple planets, definitely insurance premium. But like at the same time, it's like there are lots of scary filters that could be coming up, and
yeah, we just don't know. I mean, that's what's wild about this time is like, you know, the technology is power, right? I mean, technology is power to your footprint gets bigger. You just are able to manipulate the world and the environment more and more, and like technology is exploding. So is our power, you know, godlike power is kind of like, ooh.
Yeah. I'm very nervous about the Fermi Paradox in the future still myself, and sort of the great filters. But let's talk a bit about that. You said in 2015 that it hit you pretty quickly that the world of AI is not just an important topic, but the most important topic. And you wrote, an amazing piece on AI that everyone should read on the Wait But Why blog. But let's talk about it a little bit. You're obviously prophetic because AI hadn't really been as much in the consciousness in 2015. A bunch of us were trying to invest in it, trying to figure it out. But obviously, it didn't really explode like as something that was working until the last few years. So what did you see that led you to this conclusion? What did you know?
I think that actually I think that Nick Bostrom and Ray Kurzweil and some others, I think they're the prophets because all I did was read some of their book. Basically, my judge for whether it's a good thing something's a good thing to write about is I just use my own self. Like, do I find it interesting? I assume that my audience is a big group of me because they're close enough that usually that's a good gauge. So when I started hearing about AI in 2015, it was really, that's pretty early, where I think people forget how recently it still seemed just like a sci-fi concept. Yeah. AI seemed like something that is in sci-fi movies only. And 2015, that started to change. It was actually 2014 I first started hearing about it. I wrote about it at the very beginning of 2015. And I started to hear about real serious people talking about it. I said, what's going on? So I read Nick Bostrom's book. I read, The Singularity is Near by Kurzweil. Nick Bostrom's book is Super Intelligence. I mean, these books really, I think, were way ahead of their time. And my eyes were wide. And so I said, holy shit, and if I feel this way, I'm sure my readers are also kind of hearing about it, wondering what's going on, and they're going to have their minds blown. So I decided to just basically take I read then a bunch of more things, and I just tried to synthesize what's the story here. And my conclusion was that this is the most important possible thing because, like we were just saying, intelligence yields power. Intelligence correlates with power. Oh, so we have we have a little bit of an intelligence advantage over other primates, other animals, and we play God over all of them. So I'm like, we're very used to being the king of the intelligence castle on Earth. That's the only thing we've ever been. That could be changing, like, next decade. What? Like, in our lifetimes. And so it just I can't believe everyone's not talking about this. And so then I wrote about it.
And you knew that might be changing because these other guys' books, they kind of convinced you it was coming.
Yeah, I just started to understand what was going on, which was I started to understand the concept of that real intelligence can exist in a computer, and that it's getting rapidly smarter as Moore's law continues and there's more processing power. And we come up with new different architectures. At the time, the thing we do today, neural nets and deep learning, that was one of many potential ideas then. I don't think it was so obvious it was going to be the thing.
No, until they came up with the transformer architecture in 2017, exactly. It didn't make sense how it gets there. And
it was one potential interesting, pathway. But the thing that these books made me understand is that if AI can start moving up in intelligence, it's not going to stop at the human intelligence station. It's going to just race right by us because all of these limitations that our intelligence has, so it's the size of our skull, like the brain can't get much bigger. Even if it could, it doesn't move. Neurons don't communicate quick enough for it to function as one system if it were too much bigger. But AI brains are at the speed of light. They could be huge and keep going. AI is editable, upgradable. All the AI in the world can share knowledge with each other and be this collective intelligence. There's just, suddenly it's going to pass us. And when it passes us, it's not just going to be, so this is the core concept that I think because people think, okay, well, the chess AI has been beating humans for 30 years, 40 years. So AI is already smarter than us. And that's when you get to this key concept that I first understood in 2015, which is that there's two axes of intelligence. You can think of the horizontal axis as magnitude. So that's like the chess AI is higher than us at chess. It crushes us. Yeah. And then the other axis we can call like breadth.
So it's like narrow intelligence versus general versus super intelligence.
So when people talk about narrow versus general, they're talking about the what I'm calling the x-axis, the breadth. Yep. And this is the thing that we're unmatched at, including today still. So AI is amazing at narrow skills. When you give AI a narrow skill, chess or direct, map directions or in this language, 100 things, it just quickly becomes better than us at it. Because again, it doesn't have these limitations. And animals, elephants can, I think, smell water from 400 miles away. Other animals use echolocation or the dog's ability to kind of have a whole landscape of smell. Other animals beat us at certain narrow skills, but none of them can match our breadth. So this is called general intelligence, which is this idea that we can be good at anything. We can learn any skill. A dog can't learn any skill. And at the moment, neither can AI. One example you use is we have so LLMs today are more general than they used to be. So LLMs can do a wide variety of things in a really kind of impressive.
But they're more statistical engines than reasoning engines, right?
Yeah, and here's like a litmus test that I forget who I was talking to. Someone brought this litmus test up, which is LLM still can't run a gas station. Just because it involves all of these things that for us with general intelligence, it's no big deal. For an AI, it's going to have it's not there. So we're still the king of the general intelligence castle for now.
One of the interesting frameworks for this that I thought I want to push back on the super exponentials. Like my general view is it's extremely important, but I think the world works in these S shapes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times things can hit an asymptote for quite a long time. And so one of the interesting questions is, if you try to do things we can't do with AI and LLMs and our reasoning right now, our reasoning engines, is that you don't know what questions to ask to get the job done. There's like a space that you can call like question space, and like one of the hypotheses is like the neural net for question space is a lot harder to build and define, because there's only so much feedback you can get from reality to make question space better. And because think about it, if you want AI to do something, you have to know all the questions to ask to get it to do that. And so if you're like thinking in question space, it may be there's only like so much data and input you can have, that you can only have a certain size neural net to do question space and get it right. And then one of the hypotheses is that human brains actually grew to the optimal size and no bigger of like how much data there is for question space to iterate, and therefore there may be like natural limits to certain types of intelligence if there's not more data to iterate on.
Yeah, this is all totally unprecedented. So we literally don't know if we're about to hit a big wall, or if the wall's way higher, the ceiling's way higher. But what's interesting about like AI until 2000, and really until pretty recently mostly, was symbolic AI. It was specifically programmed logical steps that the developer programmed, and it executes. So the programmer can tell you exactly why AI is doing what it's doing and how it works inside.
Not anymore, yeah.
This is a totally different thing. People say we don't build deep learning networks. We don't build.
No, we're building giant brains.
We grow them. We grow them. So you basically build a nursery.
Yeah.
And this thing grows out of it, and then we say, okay, who are you? What can you do? Are you conscious? Like, can you play chess? Like, they didn't know that GPT-4 could play chess until like a year after it came out, and then people realized, oh, it's good at chess.
So this is a decade later since you wrote this, and obviously a lot's happened now. I think a few years ago you said in a Reddit AMA that you were in favor of pausing AI research because it's kind of scary and we don't know what we're growing here. Like, do you still feel that way? Like, how do you think about this?
I mean, we're in a quandary here, because we have to ask, what is the scarier prospect? An arms race that throws caution to the wind and tries to accelerate the process of building these superhuman brains, or risking, slowing down and risking that China gets ahead of us and now has a massive technological advantage that might be, permanent. Those are both terrifying, I would say, to an American, or they should be. And the question is, what's scarier? What's the bigger risk? And so you can try to find that middle ground and say, listen, we should try to stay ahead, but go cautious while staying ahead. But now, China's shown that maybe it's going to be harder to stay ahead of them than we thought. Maybe this limit on chips is not going to.
Well, they're good at stealing stuff and then iterating on it.
Right. So I wish I had a good answer here. I think that we have to try to, what you would want is everyone to become scared enough of this thing to feel like it's, people should feel like Game of Thrones, where these are the White Walkers coming. And that's how we should think about it. No, it might not be. I think that there's a good chance AI is great and doesn't hurt us. The point is, but the downside we have to worry about, because it could be bad. And if it's bad, it's going to be massively powerful. So we should think about it as, I think that I would hope that China and the U.S. could be grown up enough to say in this moment, like, let's not create like a giant existential risk for the whole planet by racing. We have to come up with some. Now, maybe that's naive, and maybe that'll never happen. I just don't know.
The problem is, anytime they're going to try to put some rules in place, they're going to be gaming it to try to trick us, because there's no trust there,
right?
And for good reason, because they have stolen a bunch of stuff.
So with nukes, we did bring down the number of nukes, right? Didn't we?
But nukes, we all kind of understood about how well they worked, about where they were going. This is a very different thing. Like, you can understand, like, okay, the nukes are going to get bigger maybe, or something. Like Tsar Bomba was just like much bigger, scary thing, and that's like kind of crazy. But it's I don't think it's analogous to like this. Not knowing where this thing goes and what we can put in place to have an advantage or not with it.
It still also required a human to set off the nuke. The point,
and it required a massive industrial complex. Like, you could have like 10 guys doing an AI.
Right. Right. And it's like if the nuke itself could wake up and start the nukes themselves could start fighting each other without our permission or consent, without our control. Like that's what we're dealing with. So.
Do you really think that's the biggest threat? Because for me, I still think it's people using AI for the next decade. It's going to probably cause the problems. But you're worried about the AI itself at some point.
I'm worried about both. I mean, I think that in the near future, of course, you're going to have a higher risk of bad guys with using AI, to do things like manufacturing scary bioweapons, things like that you really, things that could really kill a billion people. I mean, people with AI can, there's obviously the smaller concerns where, you can start to creating deep fakes and all of that. I mean, that's a big concern for civilization as well. But I'm thinking like, bioweapon or, autonomous drones, swarms of drones that can go into a city and specifically target, so. Yep. But I think as time goes on, I just think it's totally unprecedented. We're literally like monkeys building humans. I mean, like we should be scared. We should be scared of that. Like it could turn out well, but you kind of have to get lucky. And there's a lot of people that think we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to align this thing before it becomes too powerful to change.
The bioweapon one is probably the one that scares me the most. Not to talk about horrible things, but I do think it's fascinating. I do a lot in biotech as well, and we have all these new machines that are able to like construct and build like chains of things and build viruses and stuff like they did in China. Like maybe we should be regulating those. Like I'm like so against regulation for most AI stuff because I don't think these like random people paid $100K a year are going to be able to like save the world from the AI. I think it's going to harass us and break things. But maybe there should be some rules around certain things in bio or something like.
Well, so actually, I think you even helped connect me to some of these biotech companies, and I talked to a bunch of them, and I asked, they're all very optimistic. Most of the people building things are, and I would get so excited talking to them about, the incredible things they're doing for.
We're going to cure a lot of diseases.
Oh my God, cancer. Yeah. I mean, Alzheimer's. I mean, and then augmentation in ways that will become normal. And I don't think anyone want to come back to this world when we have this dumb medicine that it's smart precision medicine. And then I would ask, does this same technology, help the people who want to make bioweapons? And just yes, everyone said yes. And so that's going to have to be something we, but then hopefully maybe also the same technology can help create really rapid vaccines, really rapid, so there's going to be, it's like cybercrime and cybersecurity. I mean, there's going to be a good guys versus bad guys thing going on here.
I guess we don't know. This is a fascinating thing about warfare the last few thousand years is you have the offense and the defense thing, which is better, right? Like cannons are such better offense that they changed the dynamic and you got rid of small cities. Like I wonder who wins in offense, defense, and bio. I don't know it well enough. Yeah.
And if the problem is if bio is not like, a cannon that can, screw a city over, if the offense wins with bio, like a billion people die,
Well, also, I mean, it's scary because you can imagine an AI or some evil person like creating something. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about these things, but they like could hide in you and then get turned on all at once by something. Yeah. And it's just like there's like really scary things they could do.
Totally, and that's a theme. Honestly, you look at any technology right now, and it's like, wow, the power for this to do good and like revolutionize everything and solve all our problems, and then it's like, wow, like the bad guys and with this in their hands could do some really bad things, and it's just it's high stakes.
This is why it's tied to the Fermi Paradox very closely in scary ways.
Right. So I know we're on the optimist show, but the pessimistic view, the people would say something like, look at how this is going. It doesn't matter how good the good guys are. It takes us in one of these fields, the bad guys to get an edge for a little bit, and they can just wipe everyone out. And that's got to be so common that's why we don't see they all do this. And then again, optimists have a bunch of different arguments.
I guess it makes you more biased towards Elon's like, let's have the backup planet, let's have maybe some people living out by the asteroid belts. They could be like weirdos, but maybe just in case they could repopulate us or something like that.
And beyond just Elon, like when you remind yourself what's going on and the crazy stakes, it's like, let's be grown-ups, everyone. Let's be wise. How can we be wise together right now? Like, stop being childish.
Okay, well, let's go from being wise to your book, because that was so you spent like 5 or 6 years all of a sudden on this crazy side quest to like figure out what had gone wrong with our civilization. It's called "What's Our Problem?" Is the book. So what inspired you to do this?
I mean, exactly this conversation. I was writing about stuff like AI. I wrote about Neuralink. I wrote about cryonics. I wrote about all these incredible things, and I was thinking about, because people focus on the dystopia, but like the utopia that we could have, I want to be there. Yeah. I want to be in the good 2050.
It's possible for us to solve like every problem in our society
everything,
right now,
including our own mortality. I mean, you can really like crazy things, like anything humans are scared of, we could solve. And then the dystopia is really scary, and that ranges from full apocalypse to we're in a permanent kind of dystopia with a AI dictator to just we're set back to the Stone Age. The whole thing blows up, and now we have no technology, and we're trying to learn how to do electricity again.
Does this ever bother you that we just happen to be alive right at this time when all this is happening? Isn't that kind of suspicious?
I think on one hand, it might just be a coincidence. On the other hand, like a lot of people are around right now. The population's swelling. Like there's going to be a lot of people here in a time like this because there's going to be, the population is so much bigger than it used to be. So it's also not that big a coincidence. Like, I think 1/15 of humans that have ever lived are currently alive.
Yep.
So
of course we happen to be alive.
It's not like a 1 in a million that we were here. It's like a 1 in 15 that we were here. In a way, you could think about it.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
If I was gonna have like a show where like aliens get to go live as like humans on this fascinating planet as a piece of art, though, this would probably be the time you'd have them be alive.
If you're observing Earth, this is when you're saying to everyone, hey, guys, shh, come here, it's getting really good, right?
Yeah.
Because this is when are we going to pull it off? Basically, are we going to pull it off, and are we going to kind of be one of the cosmic civilizations up in this? Exploring the galaxy for the next 100 million years, or are we going to just ruin it all right now? And so I'm having these thoughts, and then simultaneously, I'm on social media, I'm reading the news, and I'm just seeing us descending into an extremely childish culture war, where you have grown-ups behaving like middle schoolers, cliques and punishments for saying the wrong thing, and gotchas, and lying, just misleading, and using populations of less fortunate Americans as kind of pawns in your game against each other, just obsessed status, middle school. And I said, what is going on? I don't believe that these people are all just inherently immature. I think that something is in the air that is bringing out the worst in a lot of people. And and that's what I was trying to say. What's our problem? I said, what is our problem is what I wanted to dig into. And of course, that's quite a big rabbit hole.
It's a huge rabbit hole. So you created a bunch of frameworks that I thought were really interesting. And we probably should show a couple of these directly. Like one of the frameworks I really liked is like you got an X and a Y axis. And I think on the Y axis, it's like, the high end is like a scientist, is like that you're operating as a scientist, but on the very low end, you're a zealot. And then in between, from a zealot, you become like an attorney trying to argue for yourself. And a little bit above that, you're like a sports fan, but maybe you could be convinced. Tell us a little bit about some of these frameworks.
Yeah. The big idea is it's like a vertical axis that I just think we need in our conversations. We have left, right, center, right? Yep. Far right, far left, and we need that. That's important. And you can just extend that to a square, and you can have, authoritarian, libertarian, and whatever. People, you see the compass.
Yep.
That's still a what you think space.
Yep.
We need to also just ask ourselves, how did you get there? Did you get there because you are identifying with a certain tribe's beliefs, and that's what the tribe said to do, and you're just lockstep following, and you're only reading things that confirm that, and you're not at all actually concerned with truth, even though you think you are?
Yep.
Or did you get there because you learned a ton and you started off with a humble I don't know, and you slowly started to gather evidence, and you eventually arrived there way later, and you could happily defend that, in a debate in front of, where does your, what's your certainty made of?
Yep.
Is it unearned? Is it strongly held weekly? Is it strongly felt weekly or strongly held weekly supported beliefs or not? Right? Or strongly held, strongly supported beliefs. So, there's that and to me that axis is everything. I don't care if you're in the what I call the low rungs, which is you're forming you're just in the tribal zone. No one's going to change your mind unless the tribe itself gives you permission to, and you're just kind of I'm not even.
And that's probably how we evolved as a species, is we to work with these tribes in order to succeed, right? So there's I feel like all of us have a part of our animal brains that even if you do get something I have friends, I won't mention who very prominent guys in the tech world who are like scientists in so many ways, but I guess see there being like zealot tribal people about some of these things right now because they're so convinced, and they just live in that area sometimes.
Yeah, the way I kind of framed it is we each have kind of two minds in our head. This really kind of more primitive brain, which is just basically a piece of software that helps us survive in a 50,000 BC tribe, which conformity, rigid conformity, and doing what the authority says.
I love that if human history were a 1,000-page book visual you made, and it's like we basically all evolved from like all these things that are from tribes.
Yeah. The first 990 pages of the 1,000-page human story are basically just trying to be a good member of an ant colony tribe, and survive against the other ant colonies. So that's in our heads now.
Yeah.
But then we also have this other crazy ability, this thing that separates us from other animals, this amazing ability to to actually override that and to free yourself and become an independent thinker and actually, and be in touch with reality and search for truth. And I think and again, when I do talk about these rungs in the book, I'm not saying those people on the low rungs. I'm saying when all of us slip down there, we act like this.
I think that's important is all of us have that. I mean, I
course.
think we have to be honest with ourselves a lot of times, and especially for me when I'm like more tired or I'm like not in like an uplifting mood. I'll like when I read or see something, like there's a part of my brain that's just looking for, is this my tribe or not? Which is it's just messed up, but it just does that,
Of course, we all do it, and especially when emotions get heightened or something where really close to your identity gets brought
The
up.
identity is part of like these views sometimes.
Well, I think that for the dumb brain, I think it identifies with views. Views are you. When they get attacked, it feels like I'm being attacked. The people who disagree with those views, you hate them. You dehumanize them. You don't care if they die, basically. That's that brain. The other brain doesn't think like that at all. The other brain says, yeah, bring it on. I'm sure I'm wrong about some stuff. Like, if you disagree with me, like, let's figure out how you got there. Let's talk about it. Like, it's just a totally different part. It's a grown-up part of your brain. And I think that I first wanted people to just have this access so they could start assessing themselves. Remember, we're all on this ladder. Try to be high up on it. When I say scientists, I don't mean that scientists all think like this. Of course, there's a lot of zealot scientists out there. I'm talking about the scientific method, right? The humble scientific method. And then secondly, when you're reading an article or absorbing information, and you're figuring out who to trust, assess them on this. Don't assess them, they're on the right with me, they're on the left with me. Assess them, does this person, have they shown me that they're up on the high rungs when the way they think and form beliefs? Otherwise, tune them out. Someone who's just repeating their tribe's thing is not real information. It's not interesting. It doesn't matter what they're saying.
And that's like most stuff online these days is just the tribal stuff, and it's really hard to overcome that.
It's exactly. And you just know what people are going to say before the issue starts, and I can tell you, they're going to say this, they're going to say this, and these specific words, because that's the words that are going around as the words you use right now to refute this argument.
It's actually really tough for me because the feedback of the tribal stuff is really strong and positive from social media. So I have like an X account, and I try to put interesting things up and I try to put thoughtful things up, but you're kind of like trained by the algorithm for like what is going to get, thousands of likes.
And even the fact that you're thinking about that puts you ahead of it. Most people don't even know that they just think I'm awesome, And
I do think that.
and like the algorithms specifically incentivize what I would call like low-rung thinking and low-rung rhetoric. Really tribal and also just really confident.
Yeah.
Because in the low rungs, the more conviction you say something with, the smarter you seem. On the high rungs, saying I don't know makes you seem smart. In the low rungs, it makes you seem wishy-washy and like, morally.
It makes you seem like a rhino in the right.
Exactly. So, or even among the rhinos, which is its own tribe. Then expressing. Maybe some actually, I think the conservatives are actually right about this, and then that you seem bad. So
that's funny. Yeah.
Every single group is going to have an element. Some groups are going to be more tribal than others. Then you're going to find more like low-rung thinking on the far left and far right. Not all of them.
So stepping back, like you have a bunch of interesting graphs about like things that went wrong in our culture. One of them that stuck out to me was like people's perception of racial relations in our country, which it seems that really, really went down a lot the last 15 years. And it seems like some of those perceptions got caught up maybe in some of these low-rung thinking on different extremes. Like, is that getting better now? Is it getting fixed? Like, where are we?
Yeah, what you saw was, I focused a lot of the book on the woke movement because it was very current, and it was just such a good example of what's going on, where you have, the history of, civil rights and women's suffrage before that, and, gay marriage more recently. That's like a proud part of America. That's what makes America great, is that a group that isn't, getting fair treatment can fight for it and get it. It's revisable, it's editable.
Yeah.
And the history of America is just full of that. New immigrants come, they're not getting treated, and eventually, treated well, and eventually they rise up and they become powerful and they get their rights, and it's amazing.
It's really cool. I'm Irish on one side and Jewish on the other side, and both of those groups got like the shit beat out of them in America for a long time in like really nasty ways. And it's very funny because now I'm seen, of course, as like the scion of privilege, which is because we've shifted, which I guess I appreciate, but it's funny. Like
totally.
Don't ask my grandparents about that,
I would call that that's like what I would call those are high-rung movements. I like to think of America as a like liberalism, lowercase l liberalism, as a house that we're all living in, and the support beams are stuff like free speech and free assembly and free press and whatever you want to say, the justice system. These are the support beams of the house. And I think the healthy way that America is when you have people who totally disagree with each other within the liberal house, who all agree the liberal house is good,
Yeah.
the Constitution is good, but we're not achieving it right for this reason. They say, no, you're wrong, we're not achieving it right for this reason, and this is actually what the founders intended, and blah, 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 blah. And they're arguing about...
That's a healthy debate,
Yeah, that's what they should. And this group's getting left out, and like, no, well, now this group's getting... Okay, perfect. That's what it should be. You're never going to have everyone happy. That's the best case scenario. And again, left, right, and center, all inside the house. And now, I think what people had to realize is that some groups are literally not in the house. They're outside with a wrecking ball.
It's the postmodernists, like
Yeah,
people like
just
them.
Marxists. You could say some elements of the far right today. Like they're actually with a wrecking ball, and what they're doing is they're not saying the liberal house is good. First of all, like the Marxist left, literally they would agree with me here. They say that liberalism is itself a bad exploitative system that entrenches power of the powerful people, whatever. So their goal is, and the house should be complete. They want revolution, liberation from the house.
They purposely try to break things in our society and our cities in order to create the revolution. People don't realize this about the Marxists in our cities. They're literally trying to break things because that caused revolution. So
They would probably admit this. I mean, they, again, this isn't like their secret belief. Marxism literally is the belief that liberalism is bad. They think that it is inherently oppressive, and that, and so of course, not only are they trying to break it, but they're doing it through means that are not liberal. So like, that's why they will try to be censoring people. They'll try, and because free speech is not important. If you think the whole house is bad, who cares about that support people?
And it seems like they got in charge of a lot of things. I think one thing that was crazy, as an example, was at PayPal, they threatened to take away $2,500 out of your account if you were caught inciting hatred or misinformation, which they were defining as they wanted. This actually red-pilled the former PayPal CEO, David Marcus, who ended up speaking out on the right.
Colin Wright, he's on Twitter, and he said something about he writes about biological sex and the importance of the binary biological sex for sports and stuff, and he got PayPal. I think they confiscated $2,500 of his money
for writing about that and disagreeing.
I have to look into the details again, but like, it's so this is the kind of thing where you're like, this is that. What I don't care what he said.
Yeah.
That does not belong in the liberal house.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make any. There's a lot of things where I'm like, this is what I was trying to say in the book to people, and this is why you can't just have left, right, center. Because if you say I'm on the left is good, blue good, red bad, then you see this woke movement come along, and all you can say is they're on my team. And the people who don't like them, they must be the bad guys. If you only have a horizontal axis, that's the only thing you can see is people fighting this must be bad, must be my enemies. If you can expand this a little bit and have more of this vertical axis and just think about this liberal house, you can start to say, actually the liberal, the lowercase l liberal conservatives are more on my side than the people on the left with the wrecking ball outside the house. And what I was trying to say to people in the house is it should not matter what they say. If they're coming at it and saying, we're anti-racist, or they're coming at it and saying we're white supremacists, it shouldn't matter what the content of what they're saying, because they're literally have a wrecking ball outside the house. So you need to stop caring and saying, well, they're on my team and I need to defend them because of what they're saying. It's irrelevant. They're outside the house. That's the first question. Are they in the house? Once you deal with them, now you can go back to the fighting with the conservatives inside the house, because that's second priority, because the house has to stay up first. And so it's such a perversion of liberal social justice. Like Martin Luther King said, his whole thing was this house is good. And the Constitution was good. The founders did a great thing, but blacks are getting a raw deal. They're not getting, the house is not working well for them. It's broken in this area. Let's fix it. Let's make the house even better. And it's the opposite.
And I think what's scary also use your framing is that the goal of the people who are fighting on the left would be to try to paint the far right as outside of the house too, which some of them are. But I've actually seen a lot of suggestions that our adversaries are actually purposely trying to sponsor these far right accounts to try to make people on the moderate left even more afraid of the right than they would be, because it's good for them to think that there's this racist, crazy, wacky people there, because then that causes them to fight more and to help their crazies, as opposed to letting us work together. It's an interesting challenge.
Totally. I mean, if you're an adversary of the U.S., you love the wrecking balls.
Yeah, you want more wrecking balls on both sides.
And what you want is the people inside the house in such a tribal craze that they, instead of banding together against the wrecking balls, they start defending their own wrecking ball and associating anyone who disagrees with them with the other wrecking ball, and not even seeing their side as a wrecking ball. And the whole thing, that's how the country can just fall apart. I mean, So that was kind of my plea with this. Is I was writing this really not as from the, I wasn't writing it to people on the left or people on the right. I was just writing it to people to be like, we need to think about this broader, zoom out and think about like this bigger picture, and then get back to fighting each other, because right now this is bad, right? This is,
and it's interesting, and not to talk too much about current things, but it's fascinating right now with the new administration, because we do have people who are being very, very bold to clean out their version of the left wrecking ball, but then of course they're being painted as the right wrecking ball. So it's just going to be, and of course you have to know we're actually in the House and we are doing with principles, but we're just trying to stop this crazy thing, and that's probably like a lot of the debate right now.
And they need to articulate that. It's like people need
important.
to, because it's just so easy. If you go this week on to X and scroll around for a while, and then which I do is as basically an exploratory activity, I'll go down blue sky and I'll scroll. And it is two utterly opposite realities. I mean, you scroll down one and you think that incredibly evil people are doing a once in a century, this is like the worst part of the Civil War is a coup and like the existential crisis. And you go to the other one and you say, oh my God, the country's restored. The good people are back in charge and dismantling all of this evil corruption. Thank God. And it's like,
it's totally different realities.
You can say what you want about the 50s or 60s. People weren't living in two opposite realities back then.
Is this most people, or is this just like a few extreme fringe people online living in these different realities? Like where are we facing?
I think yes, I think when you're in the online world, it seems more like this is the whole world. But what you see more and more is that the media, the mainstream media, which does reach now a lot of the real world, takes their cues from
the online
social media. Yeah. So the things that the really extreme people are going to be saying on something like Blue Sky, that's going to end up on MSNBC and probably in a New York Times op-ed, the next week. So it is real and it's a problem. I mean, I think, yeah.
So you talked a little bit also in this, What's Our Problem? And people should go read it because there's just so many cool frameworks we're not going to have time to get to. But you talked about how to conquer a college, how to conquer a society. Obviously, a lot of our institutions were consumed by these movements and by these tribal things. How did that happen? And are we fixing it? Is there a chance we're going to fix it? Like, where are we with this?
Yeah. So when I was trying to say, how did, because universities used to be the picture of liberalism.
They were the scientists. They were the actual scientists thinking. Yeah.
And they were professional research institutions, and they had Veritas as a plaque on, you walk into Harvard, it says Veritas.
It's like ironic
stone.
now. It's ironic.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was, Thomas Jefferson found, it was like, this was a new concept that truth matters here, not divinity, not any one belief. That's why you have tenure, so that professors are protected from the political fads. These things are built by very, very liberal people. And they, of course, have fallen into the hands of the opposite, extremely illiberal people who just don't, they don't believe in liberalism. And how? And so if you actually look at stories, which is what I was just showing, what actually happened here? When was the moment when, in one college or another, when the power balance shifted? And it's that, if you're the faculty and the admin at a place like, and the donors are part of it, at a place like Harvard, you walk in, you see that Veritas stone plaque. It's just like if you're a priest and you walk into a church and see the cross, it's a reminder of what you're hearing, what the telos of this place. When you walk into Harvard, your job is to uphold that plaque. And what happens is you see these challenges to it, where someone would say, we need to fire this professor because they disagreed with the common, the fad today, the thing that we're all, offended by this week. They said it, let's get them out. And that can be a tenured professor even. This is, again, totally violating the purpose of tenure. And then the administrators and the rest of the faculty kind of have a moment of truth, because they say, we can either say, nope, Veritas, we stand up for the principles here. No, this person's allowed to say different things and disagree with you, even if they're offensive. That's part of finding truth, is we have a wide range of views. Or they say, yep, let's fire them because they're scared and they don't want to be the next target. And you can just see this moment of truth, this key moment. And one after the other, whether it's the New York Times or Harvard or, American Medical Association, they all
gave in.
They all gave in.
But they all do it in a very deceptive way, right? So for someone I really admire is Roland Fryer, who happens to be African-American from like a poor background, raised by his grandma, a great economist, tenure at Harvard, genius, not really on the right or the left, but some of the data from some of the studies about police violence came out to support something that would have been more, I guess you'd call it, on the right narrative. And so other parts of it also would support the left narrative, and he published it. and people took the right narrative and they were really offended. And of course, Claudine Gay, who at the time wasn't even president yet, but she was like a big internal African-American woman activist at Harvard, she went after him and she found a former student and she got the former student from like 10 years ago to say he'd done some inappropriate things. And they used that to like knock him out for a couple of years and like punish him for going against the narrative. And she later became president, famously. Unfortunately, they got rid of her. So kind of karma. She deserved it. But it's fascinating that like it's not that she said, "Oh, you're not allowed to say these things about this data."
Course not. No
they
one
find
says
other
that.
ways to get you. You know.
No one who's breaking that support beams ever says we're breaking support beams. They pretend that we're just trying to uphold. They pretend they're we're just trying to uphold the liberal house here and the rules. So it's always very deceptive. But it's only deceptive if you're not paying very much attention. When you look, and you can see this and you see the pattern. New York Times. During the George Floyd riots, Tom Cotton writes, "Let's send in the troops," which 62% of Americans agreed with it in that moment.
Wow.
So it wasn't that controversial of you, but amongst New York Times readers, of course, it was a smaller. But the point is, New York Times, if they're the paper of record, right? All the news that's fit to print, they're supposed to be a paper that's there. When they walk into that office, they're supposed to be the paper that says, we're going to publish what the 62% of the Americans believe this thing, and this senator is going to come say it. That should be here. We want to hear it. Especially if you disagree, we need to hear what the opposition thinks so we can argue against it. So what happened is there was such an uproar that the editor of the op-ed section, James Bennett, ended up having to leave.
Yeah.
That's a moment of truth where the New York Times basically says, the paper of record, they cross that out and they say, we now are an arm of this political movement. That's
100%.
who we are.
100%.
And that happened again and again and again.
And culturally it happened too. I want to give one other example, which I think touches both of us. So we're trying to build a great new university that set the example, obviously, with UATX. And I think we actually sponsored you to speak at South by Southwest for the university and draw attention. And it's something we're really proud of our association and someone who pursues truth and talks about these things. And I remember because the people running South by Southwest were so extremely on the radical side, I don't know if it's against you or most probably against the university. They sidelined you, took you out of the booklet, didn't show it off. Like what happened with this?
Yeah, we just saw. We looked at the things that were being advertised, and it was 10 woke talks in a row. That's it. That's what they were showing. Every single one fit with this one worldview. And again, that worldview can be represented there because it's part of what's going on. But it was the only worldview that they said we're going to push.
Going to highlight.
And we're going to highlight. And again, when I'm not coming in here as a hardcore right winger. I'm coming in here saying, hey, basic liberal principles are good.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you go back to the 90s, everyone who liked Bill Clinton and the Clintons themselves would totally agree with that.
And that's also what our university stands for, by the way. That's why we're relying on that, obviously. Yeah.
Right. It's just, but again, this is what I'm talking about childish. I'm not saying anything even crazier. This is just basic grown-ups should be just saying yes, of course, of course, and that is enough to have the South by people say this guy's bad news. This guy's bad news because again, if you're in the house, you're not going to want to push my talk away. You're going to say, sure, it's part of what's in the house. Let's talk about it.
But some of these people actually in charge are not in the house. But
it's when the people are beholden to an ideology that specifically says anything arguing in favor of the house. Again, they're not thinking these exact thoughts, but anything arguing in favor of the house is bad because it's sneakily, and of course, if you are in this worldview, you see anything that disagrees with you as right wing. So people, I got called Tim, ever since Tim went to the far right, and even just that Tim's whole thing is anti-woke. And I want to say my whole thing is pro-liberal. That's it. Yeah. I'm just being pro-liberal right now. It's not far right, and it's not like anti-woke is my cause. I'm being pro-liberal, and this movement is seriously threatening.
If you owned, so I actually a friend's uncle owns South by Southwest. He claims to be in the house. I think I'm gonna get to know him better. If you were that guy and you owned it and you saw these crazy people doing this, what would you do as the owner?
Yeah, you have to make a decision. You either are going to say, am I going to have the courage to say, hey, the founding mission of South by was X, Y, and Z, and we're going to still do that, or am I going to let these kind of underlings grab the podium and say that this is the new these are the new rules, and I'm going to sit on the side and just watch them redefine it. You have a choice. Sometimes you might say, look, I don't want to get attacked. I don't want to have to. I'm just gonna sit back. I don't want to lose my income stream. Okay, I get it. We have lots of things, but you have to acknowledge what you're doing, which is you are picking some personal ease right now over. You're abandoning the thing that you're supposed to.
It's a lack of courage. I've noticed most owners in our society of a lot of these properties have just lacked courage. I'm hoping 2025 is a year where that courage comes back. So I'm optimistic it's coming back.
It's already been coming back for a while. I mean, what you see is the way it works is when you have, the mob is sitting there with their pitchforks, and again, they're a smaller group, but everyone is sitting there quiet. I don't want to be the one to speak out because I don't want to get, so everyone's quiet together, and then they go and they pitchfork someone who's courageous, and everyone just watches, and no one stands up for them because they don't want to be next. That they can hold that for a while, but their power is brittle, and when certain people start saying something, gives permission for other people to say it, before you know it, more people are saying it, and they can't pitchfork anyone, and now people are starting to say pitchforking is bad, and before you know it, it takes less and less courage every year. So now more and more people, you need to be less and less brave of a person to start speaking out, and you are seeing, I think, every year it becoming more. Now it could swing back. Yeah, I think it was swinging back leading up to 2020, and then George Floyd happened and it swung way in the other direction. Yeah. So it won't come back in the exact same form because the society is wise to that now. It'll come back in a slightly different form, and we'll all be, the same people will be fooled by it again.
And I'll be on the front getting canceled again, being bold against it, and hopefully leading others against it with you. So thank you.
Yeah, well, what's nice for you is that, and me too in a lot of ways, is that we don't work at a major institution. Like it's hard for them to really pitchfork you. They'll try, but like,
there's a few institutions that wouldn't work for me for a while because there's people in them that got me, but then they can't really cancel me.
Right, exactly. And so that's one of the nice things about today. If you're in Maoist China and this is going on, they're using physical violence. They're executing people. At least they're not doing that here. And B, there was no internet. It is hard for a mob to maintain strict information control in the internet world. I think. I don't know. It's both easier. It's a mechanism for the mob to pitchfork people. Cancel culture started on Twitter, but it also
breaks it down faster.
Yes.
So we're optimistic. Things are going the right direction. You were early on AI. You were really early on Mars. By the way, I heard you made a $10,000 bet with someone. We get there by 2030. You feeling good about that?
No. I shouldn't. I made the age-old mistake, which is I listened to Elon timelines too much. I mean, he said this was back in 2016, and he said, by 2024 we're going to have the first people on Mars, maybe 2026, because it's every 2 years. Mars has to be next to Earth. That happens every 26 months.
But 2030, we still have a chance.
I don't see it. I would be thrilled. I would guess it happens in the 2030s.
We have every 2 years we can go there. Almost every 2 years. So
the next one is 2028 or 2020.
No, 26 is the next one, I think.
Yeah, sorry. 2026, then 2028, then 2030.
Yeah, so in 2030 be late 2030, I guess, because it's a little over 2 years. But that's a chance to get there. I mean, these we're watching. You took your daughter, you wrote about it to watch these amazing rocket. It's one of the most inspiring things ever.
Oh, it's incredible. I think I think that part of the slowdown is just they're waiting for approval to do launches.
Well, now that President Trump's in, and
we'll see. I know that first they're going to send a cargo mission, so that they at least have to do it. They have to send the Starship.
Oh, you don't win the bet if there's only cargo. It has to be people. Huh?
It has to be a human setting foot.
That's tougher. So I think cargo will get there.
They might send humanoid robots too first.
My guess is it's cargo and humanoid robots.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I feel.
So you might be like a couple years off. It's gonna be close.
I would, if I had to guess now, I'd say 2035, something around there. And that's still, by the way, one of the great leaps for all life, not just humans, the great leaps for all of Earth life is going to happen in the 2030s. Like, what? This is a crazy time to be alive.
I love it. Other than AI and Mars, like you called these things earlier, is there something else we're not paying attention to that's exciting right now?
I think you're probably paying. I think you you led the A round of the companies that I'm about to mention, like Boom, Supersonic. I think after talk about S curves. Airplanes skipped an S curve. So we basically haven't progressed in 40 years with airplanes, really. And I think companies like Boom, I'm like, okay, wait, actually we might be, what Blake at Boom said to me is his goal, his vision is anywhere in the world in 4 hours or less.
The only thing that'll beat that is Elon's rockets if we fly on those. Yeah.
So I think transportation, you're going to start going faster. It's going to be more.
Joby Aviation, early to the VTOL.
Joby, exactly.
Tunnels.
3D.
Yeah,
instead of being
tunnels.
people are going to be going underground, above ground. The tunnels can start getting really fast.
I'm very bullish on tunnels the next 5 years.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if down the road, when you live in Austin, you live in the Tri-City area where there's a new restaurant in Houston or Dallas, you go because it's 30 minutes.
We got to get this done for Texas later this decade, 100%.
Tri-City area suddenly, and think about, you have now every city, you start a restaurant, you have all three cities as a market.
I wrote a piece about this in Arena magazine, Max's new magazine. I had a piece on how to spend $1 trillion better, and this is my favorite example, is all the tunneling in the Tri-City area.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about transportation. And that includes also transporting things. So drones, are going to be everywhere. Humanoid robots seem like they're going to be everywhere. First in industry, warehouses, then commercial, pouring your coffee and folding clothes in, the clothing store.
I think we should make them softer. They're a little scary right now looking.
Yeah. No. I would say we're, housekeepers. Yeah. Robot nannies and housekeepers will be in the 2050s probably.
It's usually like pillowy in case you run into them.
Yeah. No, it's gonna. We're not there yet, but like it's coming. These things that flying cars. These things that we said, that was just like a stupid sci-fi vision from the 60s. It is happening just later than people thought.
That and the health stuff. There's like lots of good stuff.
Biotech and health stuff is big and includes stuff with embryology and fertility. Crazy things happening and longevity. I just tried my first cultivated meat. This is something.
Did you like it? That sounds
delicious.
Yeah,
it was delicious. It's if you zoomed in on the chicken I had, it's made of chicken cells, just like the real chicken. It is real chicken. It's just the chicken cells grew in a cultivator instead of on a chicken's body. Same chicken.
We've gotten much better barbecue since I moved to Texas. Our chefs are copying and learning from all the local areas.
Yeah.
We started American Optimist, Tim, to push back on the cynicism in our society. What's the best case for optimistic future with all these problems you're working on? Like are we going to get this politics and the technology right? I mean, it seems like it's like there's always volatility on both sides. What's the case for us navigating it?
I think that, this conversation we're having now, I think a lot of people are going to be having conversations like it where they are reminded how high the stakes are and that, we could really be killing ourselves and excess, or we could be heading to this utopia. And that I think it can do two things. It can either the fear can drive people to be more tribal and more crazy and more childish, or it can have people rise to the challenge. And the fear can make people say, we're not going to be doing culture war stuff right now. We need to be grown-ups together and figure this out. I have hope that we're a survival species deep down. We want to survive. And I think once you start having an existential crisis, people need to feel the fear and also the excitement, and they feel those emotions. I think that's going to make everyone say, let's put our grown-up hats on. And so I do, maybe it's because I'm an optimistic person, but my gut, I feel like we'll figure it out, but my brain can't tell you exactly why.
Well, this is a good reminder to me to put my grown-up hat on and try to embrace my higher nature and be a leader who inspires others to do the same. I think if we do that, we are going to make it. So thanks for being here, Tim.
Thank you.